Welcome to Champions of the Lost Causes. I'm your host, Marvin Stockwell, and today I'm joined by Christine Lutts, president of Friends of Greenlawn Cemetery. Christine, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And I'll say
and
here,
us.
absolutely. I'll say here at the outset, this is part of the second annual Champions of the Lost Causes podcast summer road trip. We did this last year out west, and this year here we are on the East Coast, and we are in. Well, tell folks where we are.
We are in Salem, Massachusetts.
Salem, Massachusetts, which we probably all know what Salem is most famous for, but we're going to talk about something that's maybe less heralded. But in my view, probably maybe just as important, right?
Right.
So if we could here at the outset, Christine, could you talk about what Greenlawn Cemetery and the buildings that are on that property they are, what drew you into noticing that they weren't maybe all that they could be, and how you were kind of drawn into to taking action and championing the cause of making it better?
Sure. Well, Greenlawn Cemetery is a 55-acre rural cemetery. It has 2 ponds. It has an 1894 high Gothic chapel, an office, and I think that's it. Oh, there's a beautiful bridge. It looks like England on one of the ponds and a set of stairs. So having said that, the chapel itself was given to the city of Salem by Mr. Walter Scott Dickson. In memory of his wife, 130 years ago this year, actually. And part of the bridge I just mentioned over Fountain Pond was part of his work, as well as the stairs up to his family plot. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the cemetery and what's in it. Obviously, it's still an active cemetery, so we're still burying people. Mm-hmm. We started 12 years ago, and we wanted to get the cemetery on the National Register of Historic Places. There's a woman in the neighborhood by the name of Pat Donahue. She's in her 80s, and she was spearheading this. And I found out about it and went over and banged on her door, and she said, "Good, you can be my co-chair." So off and running, we went for the...
That's how it starts.
That's how it started.
You just get swept up into it, don't you?
And so we did the National Register. Pat and I got it on the National Register of Historic Places. There's a group that's been with us from the very beginning. And then since then, things have morphed into a restoration of the chapel and hopefully the conservatory at some point. We've been fundraising for restoring the chapel, and we've done quite a bit so far. And that's our main goal at the moment.
Right. Well, so before we started this interview process, we were over at Greenlawn Cemetery, and you gave us a tour. We'll hopefully be able to feature that as some kind of bonus material. But the chapel's gorgeous. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get in today, but I'm looking forward to seeing pictures of the inside. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what the original intent of the building was and what it was used for? And then the process of restoring it that you've done over these last, 12 years?
12 years, yeah. So it was given to the city by Mr. Walter Scott Dickson in memory of his wife, Georgiana, 130 years ago, with the intent that the public would use it. It was used for memorials and I don't know, I assume baptisms or whatnot. It's a non-denominational church, and he gave it with a trust fund to the city of Salem with the intent of different people using it in memory of his wife.
And besides the chapel, there was an arboretum. You want to talk a little bit about that? There was a
conservatory attached to the chapel that was taken down in the 70s. It was a lead and glass conservatory with plants and pond and koi fish, and it was open from the chapel into the conservatory, so people could kind of go in there and sit and meditate, and then maybe go into the conservatory as well. It was taken down in the 70s due to vandalism and the energy crisis. We have made that area into a flower garden, and there's over 1,000 bulbs that are planted in there. It's quite pretty. In April and May, late April, we have a flower shower. So that highlights that. But we do hope to bring back the conservatory at some point.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've seen, you showed me pictures of it. It looks really cool. So now, didn't you say on the tour that it also, part of the damage was from storms?
Yeah, I think, well, I don't know exactly, but hurricanes, energy crisis, vandalism, it was just a number of things, and so the building was taken down.
I see.
And I think at the time it was probably hard to heat. There's been a new furnace since then in the chapel itself, so that might have been. But I was not, that was the late 70s. So, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit now, listeners to this podcast know that I myself champion a cause in Memphis, the Mid-South Coliseum, and and we talked a bit about this on the tour, there's no kind of direct line. You kind of have to figure it out as you go, and all sorts of things crop up. You got to put spreadsheets of plant types and all this stuff. Can you talk a little bit about the varied work? If it started with you saying, I want to help you get this on the National Register, and she deputized you as her co-chair, how did it evolve from that? Like, how did you go from one task to getting swept into multiple tasks?
Well, once we had that done, Pat said, well, we're done. And I said, no, I think we should restore the chapel. And so here we are 12 years later, and we're getting there. We just had the stained glass windows restored, and they're like jewels of color. I mean, I can't tell you how it just makes an impact that hasn't been made before, because it's quite a number of windows, and it's quite special the way they look. They did a great job, and so we're happy with that. So we've done 2 or 3 different restoration projects so far. We're rounding around to the front side of the chapel. The east side has been done with the rose window. The conservatory's been done and is now better dealing with the elements, because originally it was inside the chapel. Inside the conservatory. And then the stained glass windows on the other side are all done. So it's basically just the front doors and the stonework, and then we'll go inside, but inside is quite beautiful. It's an entire wood roof with some carvings. It has a wood floor when we need to redo that. The pews are beautiful, and then we'll just have to do some painting.
Wow. Now that probably cost a good amount of money. Can you talk a bit about I assume that you've had to do fundraising drives, or how have you raised the money to do all this?
Different fundraising. We had a bank that was very much involved with us. The Salem 5 Heritage Bank was very much involved initially. We work with the CPA money. Salem is lucky enough to have people that voted yay for CPA, so we have had access to that twice now.
What's CPA?
Community Preservation Act, and a city votes on whether they want some of their taxes to go to that fund or not.
Oh, great.
And then there's a committee that looks over who has applied for different funding and applies it. So we've had 2 rounds of that. We've had money from Mass Historic and also the state, and then obviously the Friends of Greenlawn. So it takes a kind village working together to get it done. Well, we're getting there.
Sure. Now, in my own cause, I know that the group of supporters kind of waxes and wanes. We always had a core board, but when we would put on a big event, we might have an event planning committee that like flexed out to an additional 30, 40 people. When you do fundraising events, are there people, because you are the one who is steadfast and is constant, but can you talk a little bit about how other people who may share the passion for Greenlawn Cemetery but might not have as much time have kind of phased in and out?
Yeah, I mean, luckily I have 2 or 3 that have been with me from the beginning. I can't really run an event by myself, so it's helpful to have them, but I have a couple people that are historian experts. That's kind of their thing. We have other people that are arboretum/nature people. There's also quite a bit of birding that goes on in there, so we have some people that are wired that way. But there's people, you're totally right. People come and go, but I do have a few that I can count on, and that's wonderful. I couldn't do it without them.
So on the tour, another thing that you mentioned that I thought was interesting, and this is a kind of an issue of biodiversity, really. You had said something about, I believe it was cranberries,
Crab apples.
crab apples. Can you tell a little bit about how like the crabapple trees at Greenlawn Cemetery were sought out and for
Sure.
and why?
So let's see. So we've been at the nonprofit Restoring the Chapel for 12 years, but in the last 4 years, the actual cemetery has been made into an accredited level 1 accredited arboretum through arbnet.org. So what happened was there's a collaboration with the Salem State University, their civic engagement department, and then the Friends of Greenlawn is the community, and then the city of Salem because they own the property, the chapel, and the arboretum. So we've been working more on the arboretum. Dr. Lisa Delicio is the Salem State connection, and she has biology classes that have been coming in. They're going through the inventory. We have a 1940s list from Mr. F. Carroll Sargent, who the arboretum is named after. We haven't said that yet. It's the F. Carroll Sargent Arboretum at Greenlawn Cemetery. And so he has a list of collections of trees and shrubs that was just kind of typed that we found. And so they're going through that, and there are collections of oak trees, forsythias, lilacs, but the crab apples are big to do with food because of the genes that they could possibly have might be helpful in the long run for saving our apples.
Oh, gotcha. Now, you also mentioned there was a particular type of tree that they thought was no longer found, or
oh yeah, the dawn redwood.
The dawn redwood.
Yeah. The story goes, I think it was Harvard went to China, found the tree in the forest, brought it back to Arnold Arboretum as seedlings, and they grew some of them there. And due to back in the day, they did a lot of sharing through the arboretums, which they still do to this day. And so Greenlawn Cemetery has 3 of those original redwoods.
And so it's a rare type of redwood.
It's not a rare redwood, but for a redwood to be here, it's rare.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Okay. Redwood, I don't think is a rare tree, but I'm not 100%.
No, I thought it was a particular strain of redwood.
Oh,
Yeah. No, I've been to the giant redwoods out in California.
But to have a redwood
everywhere.
here is not.
Oh, yeah. No, that is uncommon.
Yeah.
That is uncommon.
So we have 3 of them in Greenlawn.
That's interesting. So, could you talk a little bit about, like, so I guess let me ask it this way. What keeps you going? Or what is your kind of internal engine that keeps you showing up?
I think what happens is, as you probably know from you doing somewhat of the same thing, is, there's ups and downs, people come and go. When you're working with a city, there's a lot involved. You got employees that come and go, but there's the little people, or even the people that work for the city, or here and there, that say something that really means a lot. And that's all it takes.
Yeah, you mean like says a kind
word?
Support,
kind word, just something.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to motivate people like us, does it? Really, it's just like
it depends, but and you just it is what it is, and we've come this far, and we're not giving up yet, and the city's on board, and
right,
so it's going to happen, and we're very grateful to the people that stay with us and the little tidbits of support we get. And it means a lot to anyone with whatever they're doing.
It is great to be in a position of collegiality, and I within my Coliseum cause, it's waxed and waned, and we've stared down 2 demolition threats, but we've also partnered with the city on 2 cleanups. We've had more than 130 tours of it that the city's had to acquiesce to. There's seasons in the work that and I'm glad to hear you say it's going to happen, because now it's just really all about putting your shoulder to the plow and getting it done. But can you talk a little bit about like some of those seasons where you didn't have as quite a good of a dance partner on the other end?
Yeah, and that's okay. I think
you don't have to name any names or anything like that,
there's always challenges, and I think the way that I worked with it, or we worked with it, was to make more awareness of the project, more awareness of this current situation, what going forward is, and because of the awareness, things come out of that situation and get better. I think is a big part of it.
I agree with you. I think, sometimes, government officials would really like to just have a closeted one-on-one conversation with you. And if you're not out there in the public, they can kind of like put you to sleep and kind of like you have to occasionally show up in the mass media to make the politicians sometimes go, okay, no, I'm going to get back to you, like, and I just feel like whether, and of course, obviously, social media is a big part of that, but you have to let people know what you're doing, don't you?
You do have to let people know what you're doing. You have to, say thank you to a lot of people a lot of the time.
You got that right.
Sometimes you have to mind what you say and not say. It's a great learning experience as well. And I think it's great to learn and be involved with a project that is so diverse. I mean, you've got the restoration of the chapel and hopefully the conservatory. You've got the preservation of Greenlawn Cemetery. It's a historic cemetery going back to the early 1800s. You have an accredited arboretum with special trees and shrubs and plants. So there's a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah.
And we're working with the city of Salem, who was the project, who owns everything in the cemetery. And so we're obviously working with them. But now, due to the arboretum, we're also working with the Salem State University. So there's a lot more to the project than initially was. So now we have arboretum people and we have historic people.
Yeah.
And all this restoration. But if you think about it, it's the restoration, preservation of the arboretum as well. So it all kind of goes together. We've always talked about it being an arboretum. And so it was just something that came together due to the Friends website and Lisa looking to get her biology class from Salem State involved outside, and things have just kind of come into what they are now, which is great.
As a PR pro with my own publicity practice, I'm proud to be partnering with my friends at Muckrack, an all-in-one platform that helps me build rapport with journalists and land timely media coverage. Not only does Muckrack give me the tools I need, they actively work with PR pros and journalists to build community in ways that add value to our work. If you want more information about Muckrack, visit muckrack.com. It's interesting. I think across almost all interviews I've done on this podcast, there's usually an initial reason a person is pulled in. But once they get pulled in and they kind of like develop a kind of like constellation of work, so to speak, it's like new things emerge. And so it's like, at the outset, you didn't know that all of these opportunities were going to come here. You didn't know that these people were going to need to know these things about these particular crops and how it might help them. I just think it's interesting how a cause draws us in, and then it reveals the depth of itself to us.
Well, and it keeps growing and growing, and you never know what. It's, I don't know. It's hard to explain. If you had asked me if I was doing this, 10 years ago I'd be doing this. No, but it can be very rewarding. I think it's gonna be a special place, just like other places in Salem.
Sure.
And I think it's something that, it qualifies in green space now. It qualifies in historic space. So we've got a lot more going for it, being an arboretum and a historic cemetery with something that isn't on the National Register of Historic Places.
Right.
So
it sounds like, well, it was all these things back in the day.
Right.
And it's just part of the restoration that you've kind of restored the multiple benefits to the city. When you think about how people are able to access Greenlawn Cemetery and the good that it does, how does that make you feel?
Well, I've learned a lot. Actually, we used to work with Mass in Motion a little bit, which was a part of a project downtown. And they've realized that 5 minutes of children in a green space is huge. So once a year or twice a year, they drop the buses off on the other side of Greenlawn, so they'd have to walk through to get to their school. So these are things, you need to have green space, you need to have shade, you need to have peace and nature in all of your neighborhoods and communities.
Right.
And so, yes, it's an active cemetery, and first and foremost, it is a cemetery. But having said that, it's also a green space. it's an accredited arboretum. It's a beautiful space that you can walk. It's a mile round the outside road, and so a lot of people walk in there. There are hills, so you can walk.
It's beautiful.
So it offers a lot. There were people during COVID that said, I didn't even know this was here, and I live here, like across the street, more or less.
Yeah.
But because they didn't have that time or whatever, they didn't even know. So COVID had its pros and cons with that. But, I think there were a lot more people that discovered it. And like you said, with social media and people like ourselves, awareness is key. And if you can just get the way out there, and different people are interested for different reasons, can help support your efforts.
Yeah. I know that in the pandemic, I knew about Shelby Farms Greenlawn. It's a Rails to Trails project. But boy, when I was working from home, I ended up working from the bike trail, really. I found a way to be on my Zoom call with my work team while I was pedaling down but my point is, the outdoors is so restorative. And I really feel like, mental health was already coming to the fore pre-pandemic, but the pandemic really put a spotlight on it. And I know from my time working at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, mental health in the pandemic really rose to, and I got a lot of media coverage for the hospital based on what our psychology department was doing. So I think a lot of people in the pandemic realized what just a godsend that green spaces are. And then, of course, you realize there are these studies that show that a person's health is directly related to their access to green spaces. So if the pandemic helped more people know that it's here, we got out of our kind of like, well, I guess in one sense we got more into our digital spaces, but we also realized that's not the only place you can live. And it's just like we started looking for new places of restoration. And it sounds like the people of Salem found Greenlawn Cemetery.
Yeah, a lot of people did, which was great.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what, if you had to say, like, what are your priorities, say, and I'm going to ask you the look farther out question here in a second, but in the next 1 to 2 years, what are some of the things on your docket that you're looking to do? What are some of the next steps that Greenlawn Cemetery could take?
Well, we're hopefully going to be restoring the stonework on the chapel. We have a grant, part of the budget for the city of Salem gave that money, so that's huge. We're looking for an architect right now, so that's big. So that's kind of the restoration end of it. The other end of it is the arboretum. The Salem State and Dr. Lisa Delisio is still working on the inventory. She constantly has students in classes doing that. But because of this, and again, it's part of this Community for Civic Engagement. That's the department. So having said that, because of it, we have worked with the GIS department. We have worked with other historic departments. So it's not just, so the whole college has gotten involved in different ways, or not the whole college, but different professors and different this. We were just part of the American Public Gardens annual convention.
Oh, wow. Now, you probably said which college, but I somehow didn't hear it. Which college?
It's Salem State University.
Okay.
Yeah. And so due to, again, Salem State University, we were part of the American Public Gardens annual convention. It was at the Boston Copley Park Plaza. Well, not Park Plaza. And so they had a poster event, which I wasn't totally familiar with, but if you're in academics, you probably know what it is.
A poster presentation.
Yeah. So there were about 14 posters, and we had a poster which was about the collaboration, about the crab apples, about who's working on it. It was great. All these people came by. It was only an hour or two, maybe. And it was just fascinating at how excited everyone was. There were people from Alaska, Hawaii,
wow,
Ann Arbor, just all over the place. And they're like, wow, this is great. Congratulations. This is super. And I was like, wow, okay. So things like that really can give you a little.
Oh, that fills your tank, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, a little bit. So that was kind of exciting with that. And so, there's more and more awareness, which gives us more and more capabilities. More people make bigger and better things happen. That's one of my lines, if you know me.
That's true. More people interested, the more people can honestly make a donation and accelerate things. If you had more money,
people make bigger and better things happen. And my other one is everyone working together is making a difference. Those are my two lines. You will see them everywhere on my emails and in my Facebooks, and not 100% of the time, but a big portion, because that's truly what's going on.
Sure.
It's a community, it's a city, and it's a university working with the Arboretum, with the restoration of the chapel. It's a community and a city.
Wow. I mean, those are two great mantras to lead you forward, honestly. Those two mantras would serve just about any cause well, honestly. So let's look a little bit further out. And now I'm going to ask you to really dream big. I want you to wave a magic wand.
I was already dreaming, but anyway.
I want you to dream bigger, Christine.
Dreams come true.
No, you're making them come true, slowly but surely, step by step, right? But like, if everything goes right, everything you want to succeed succeeds, and the help you need arrives, the funding you need arrives, what is the person walking up to Greenlawn Cemetery going to experience in, say, 15 or 20 years, in your wildest dreams? Like, what does it look like?
We are definitely a mini Mount Auburn. And if you may or may not know what I'm speaking of.
No, explain that to me.
Mount Auburn is the gem of the gem, at least locally. It is a private cemetery arboretum. It is absolutely stunning and gorgeous. And we've always kind of called ourselves a mini Mount Auburn. What we'd like to, I envision it being a tour. So when you're in Information Salem downtown, maybe we want to go to Greenlawn Cemetery. We might do we're talking about putting tours online. So the map that you saw would have an audio section to it. That's something we're working on now. And that's something that can be changed and altered for the future. You know what I'm saying? So you could run different tours that way.
Sure.
The other thing is I would hope that the chapel could be open for people to see and sit and enjoy. Hopefully the conservatory at some point. And having said that, you might have to have volunteers with that sort of thing nowadays. But
Docents,
that is a definite. People ask all the time about it, and hopefully it'll be used for other things, whether it be city meetings or baptism or christening or a memorial service or a funeral. And that was the intent by Mr. Dickson, who gave it to the city.
Yeah, I was just about to, you connected that perfectly. It's like, you have to believe that was the original intent, huh?
That was the original intent.
It's another part of the restoration. You're restoring the gardens, you're restoring the building, you're restoring the initial intent.
And there's a trust fund, and the trust fund is there, and they're only allowed to spend, but yes, once we get everything up and running, things should go as it should have 130 years ago.
Can you explain this trust fund? It's his family's trust fund?
He gave a trust fund to the city to take care of the chapel.
Oh, okay.
Conservatory.
Gotcha. And it's been your job to just kind of like spur them on to do what they should be doing?
That's not a job. It's a passion. And it's not my job. It's a community effort that is behind the project to get this done so it can be used by the community and the city as intended.
Wow, and what a cool day that'll be. And it sounds like we're probably more than halfway there.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Well, at least on the chapel.
Yeah.
And the Arboretum's coming along, but, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of volunteers. And volunteers, like you said, can come and go, or they don't get enough good feedback and they disappear, or what. That's been an interesting sideline too, learning all about that, but keeping everyone happy and involved is, and the nice part is you learn people's specialties. This person likes to do that, this person's good at that one, so you get good at a party, Yeah.
Different gifts, right?
Same
Same animating
spirit. You
spirit.
get good at fundraisers and putting on events. Yeah, you get good at
Sure.
it after 12 years. So
You need your 1,000-watt light bulb guys like me out front, and then you got to have the people that can work with the spreadsheets, which is not me.
No, that's not me either.
So I was zooming out even farther. We've talked a bit about your own personal motivation and how it makes you feel to do this work. The longer I do this podcast, I realize the ultimate, or the kind of almost infinite diversity of types of causes. My own cause is you could call it a preservationist cause, but I've talked to people who clean up rivers. I talked to a woman on last year's podcast road trip out in Oakland, California, who developed curricula for neurodivergent kids, leveraging risky play. Serving the homeless, feeding people, all the kind of classic nonprofit endeavors. But there really is no limit to the types of causes that people champion. But why is it that you think human beings have the capacity to want to do this? Because it flies in the face of your kind of normal success and reward metrics that we're led to believe matter. The accrual of wealth, prestige, etc. Why do you think people champion causes? Why do people invest in themselves and give of themselves in a way that is going to benefit other people more than themselves?
Well, I think they just want to see the project done. I mean, there's something to be said for building something, for lack of a better way to say it, right? Or restoring something. And so to see it finish and flourish and offer something to, it depends on the project, offer it something to someone, I think is for me is enough.
Yeah, especially when you consider your own project, you can kind of see what those people of the future are going to enjoy because of your hard work. That's fast. There is a side to it. We just want to see a job completed. That is a part of it. Yeah.
There's something to be said when no offense, when you do something and it looks nice and you get a nail all done, you're like, that's nice.
That's a satisfaction.
Right. So, and this just happens
to
be a big project and an involved project and a collaboration and just, it's lots. But, I enjoy keeping the balls in the air and connecting the people. And that's kind of what I do. That's what I'm here for, I think.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it needs a lot of attention. And sometimes it doesn't need a lot of attention, or sometimes you might see something not going so well and you have to get involved. So it depends, but I think that a lot of us are excited to see the project completed at some point. And that doesn't mean we're in it doesn't mean that it's rushed and we're disappointed. That's not what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
Okay, I'm just saying that I just think in the long run, I just think we will see it done. And I think that's the excitement at this point. Getting the stained glass windows done was huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
And when we have those tangible, interim successes, it really spurs us on. It gives us additional fuel in our fuel tank. Christine, is there anything I didn't maybe think to know to ask about this project that you'd want to weigh in on?
No, not that I know of. I appreciate you sharing the project, asking the questions, making me think about things. I never thought I'd be running a nonprofit and doing something, but that's life in general. We have chapters. We have some bigger than others. Some take longer than others, and some are different. And so I'm happy to be part of it. I can't wait for everyone to enjoy it in its capacity. It should be enjoyed.
Wow.
I guess would be.
Where can people find out more?
You can find us at friendsofgreenlawn.org, or you can find us Facebook, Friends of Greenlawn, or Patreon, friendsofgreenlawn@gmail.com, and our email address is friendsofgreenlawn, all one word, .com.
Thank you so much for being on Champions of the Lost Causes.
Thank you so much, Martin. I really appreciate sharing everything with you. Thank you.